So for this video, I'll be chatting about my January wrap-up, me chatting about all of the books that I read in the month of January. And for the most part, January was a very successful reading month for me. I managed to finish 15 books while also only DNFing one book, which was surprising, probably to some of y'all, because in November, I DNF'd 5 books, and in December of 2024, I DNF'd 5 books as well. So January, I was like, hopefully I can kind of stop this DNF train that I've been going down. And yeah, I only DNF'd one book, so pretty successful. I also had I had more 5-star reads, but of the new books that I read, the books that I've never read before, I had 2 new 5-star favorite books. So already January, I've got a couple 5 stars, books that'll probably be in my top 10 at the end of the year or pretty close to it. We'll see, obviously, because we've got the rest of 2025. But yeah, very excited from what I've read so far. And yeah, we're just going to chat about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So let's go ahead and start out with that pesky DNF. I only DNF'd one book, which is ironic because this was one of the books that I was the most excited to read. And that was Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. And if you've seen me, Stacy, and Ian's video, I'll link it down below if you haven't already. But there was a series of videos where me and Stacy picked out books for Ian to read, and we were kind of judged on like whether he would like those or not, and kind of made it into a little competition. And then once we settled that, I was the winner, by the way. We kind of reversed it, and Ian picked out 3 books for us to read, and so he could basically make us read some books, get a little bit of revenge. But yeah, I was excited about all the books that he picked, including this one. I never read a Catriona Ward book before, and I was excited from what he told me. But I got, I think, about 2/3 of the way in, and I couldn't take it anymore. I had to DNF this book for my sanity. It started out well enough. Like, it's a weird book to describe. I'm not even going to try to describe the plot. I'm just going to describe how I felt about the book. The writing, I did not like. It almost felt reminiscent of Neil Gaiman, and I've attempted to read a bunch of Neil Gaiman. I don't really like his writing style. In a weird way, I can't pinpoint what it is, but it reminded me of that. And the whole book, I was like, this just doesn't feel good reading this book. I didn't like the writing style. And then the author just made some interesting decisions, like structure-wise, because this story kind of jumps all over the place, has random bits that seemingly have nothing to do with the book. I'm sure it would have made sense if I actually finished the book, but I just was not enjoying my time with it. And on top of that, I'm not really the biggest fan of time jumps in stories. So like, literally there's a point in this book where this guy, I'm not going to say in reference to what, but he's just like, oh, this is bothering me and I'm going to get revenge. And then literally the story jumps 33 years later. I'm like, are you kidding me? What the hell? But yeah, this book was just not for me. And yeah, so Ian did not do a very good job with this first pick, but he did have a backup book for me, and that backup book will be mentioned probably towards the end of the video, so you'll see what else he chose. But yeah, Looking Glass Sound, this book was not good, and it makes me a little hesitant because our October pick for Thrill, Chill, or Kill Book Club is one of our other books, The Last House on Needless Street, and now I'm not really excited for it, but I'll still give it a fair shot. But yeah, Looking Glass Sound, I DNF'd this. All right, now that we have the one DNF out of the way, which, phew, only one DNF in January, y'all. Let's go ahead and talk about some books. I'm going to go in kind of numerical order here. So the books that I gave the less ratings to, and then work our way up to the 5 stars that we had, or that I had. But probably the worst book that I managed to finish in the month of January was Unmissing by Minka Kent. I read this book because every month on the Book Astronomy Discord, which I'll link down below, we do a random number generator game, and whoever gets closest to the number or who gets it right on the money gets to pick a random book from my Goodreads TBR page, my Want to Read. And I can't remember the winner, but they chose, actually, I think it was Culinary Crime. I think. Might be wrong, but I think that they chose this book, which I was excited about because it had kind of an interesting premise. It had a lot of good ratings. A lot of people seem to like this author's writing and stories, so I wanted to give it a shot, and it was very short, which I was happy about. It was only like 7 hours on audio, and it starts out interesting enough. Like, it starts out with a woman who gets abducted, and then years later, she kind of turns up, and, you know, her husband has kind of moved on, has a new wife, and they have a new life. But now that she's in the picture, it's a whole kind of mess. Kind of the same similar premise as like One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really enjoyed that book. So I was kind of interested to see like how is this going to get turned into like more of a thriller. Like there's going to be some kind of twist on this. The problem was it started out good, but the further on you get, the more reveals come, the more twists you develop, and it just became more ridiculous and just asinine. And it just, by the end of it, I was just like, really, like this is what we get. So yeah, by the end of this book, I really did not enjoy my time with it. Started out well enough, but the more reveals we got, the worse it became. So I gave this book 2.5 stars. Very readable, and it was very short. If it was any longer, it could have been another DNF, but I just decided to plow through it. And this book was not good, y'all. I gave it 2.5 stars. I really did not have a good time with it. Next up, I have another slight disappointment, and that is In the Grave Where the Bones Are Still Wet by Calvin Ellis. And this is the sequel to his previous book, In the Hills Above the Gristmill, which I really liked that book. I gave that book 4 stars. I thought it was a solid kind of debut thriller / horror book. And with this book, I was more excited because a lot of people were really praising its horror elements. A lot of people were saying that it really stepped up a notch on the horror elements. So I was excited. But I did not love 2 things about this book. The direction it went in, it got very weird. And then 2, the kid characters in here, because there's more characters that are introduced. The main character is kind of in a new situation, and there's some kid characters introduced, and I thought they were super annoying. And they were a big part of this book, and I did not like it. Some authors are really good at writing convincing and intriguing kid characters, and some are not. And when it's not good, it's not good. Although I seem to have the unpopular opinion here because a lot of people love this book. If you go on Goodreads, it has like a 4.8 rating, which is ridiculous. So a lot of people love it. I'm in the minority. So if you did really like that first book, definitely give this book a shot because chances are you're going to like it a lot more than I did. But overall, I thought it was good, but a step back because I really liked that first book and I didn't really like the sequel as much. But I still gave it 3 stars. Not terrible, but slight disappointment. I also read Micro by Michael Crichton, and the reason that I did this book and published a few days ago a dedicated book review for it was because on my Patreon page or my Patreon channel, I have different tiers, and one of the tiers is God tier, and if you're a part of that tier, which is the highest tier, you get to just randomly choose 2 books for me to read in 2025, no questions asked, and I'll read it, and I'll do a dedicated book review for it, and one of the people on my God tier is Patrick Hordelor, which you guys have probably seen lurking on both Book Astronomer Discord and Wizards Enclave Discord. And yeah, he chose this book for me to read, which I did enjoy, but at the same time, I kind of misremembered that I had already read this book, so this was a reread for me. And the whole time I was reading this, I was like, oh yeah, I've read this book before. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. It was still a fun time, but it's nowhere near one of my favorite Michael Crichton books. Again, I do have a dedicated book review, so I'm not going to go too much into detail here, but I did enjoy my time with it. I gave it 3 stars. Not great, but not bad either. It was good. Speaking of Patreon and speaking of Patrick, he also won the Patreon wheel spin that I do every month for my patrons. If you're a Patreon member, you get put on, your name gets put on the Patreon wheel spin, and if you win, you get to pick any book that you want me to read the following month. And he happened to win that month as well for that. And the book that he wanted me to read was Hollywood Park by Mikhail Gillette. And I knew basically nothing about this book going in other than that it was a nonfiction memoir centered around a musician. And I tend to like those books. Although for this one, I had not really heard of this guy. I had not really heard of the band that he was a part of. I've since gone and listened to a few of their songs. It's fine. But the story itself was pretty good. It wasn't like mind-blowing or anything, but you know, my favorite parts of this book where he's basically talking about how he kind of takes his pain and makes it useful. Like that's one of the quotes in here. And I think that's a pretty good summation of what artists can do. They can take something that was at first painful to them, like maybe in childhood or something traumatic happened, and then they make art with it, and then that kind of helps someone else in life go, help them out in some way. So I think that was kind of the best part about this book. It had some cool moments, had some cool quotes, but overall, not an all-time favorite. Certainly not one that I'm going to go back and reread. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was a good time. Next up, another thriller horror book that I also gave 3.5 stars to. This came highly recommended to me from good pal of the channel, Josephina from the channel Fina Reads. She really liked this book. I thought it was okay. Delicate Condition by Danielle Valentine. And the only thing I really knew about this book going in is that it dealt with a woman trying to get pregnant and then weird stuff starts to happen. And sounds interesting to me. And I went into it and it started out really good. The writing and the character work was really good, very compelling. My main problem with this book, and a lot of people, it's kind of a make or break moment, is when you get to the ending and you kind of realize what exactly is going on. I'm not going to make the comparison that a lot of people make because that kind of gives away a lot of stuff. But it does remind me a lot of a certain type of book and I guess trope in the genre of horror. And it definitely led into that a lot. The ending, it made sense, but at the same time, it kind of came out of nowhere. Like, there's no real way you could have predicted this, I think. And sometimes that works for me. Like, sometimes I love that. Like, a book like Behind Her Eyes, like that twist was like, holy crap, what the hell is going on? But with this one, I don't know. It wasn't underwhelming. It's just not, I guess, what I wanted. And maybe it could have went a step further. And even so, like, you get to the end of this book and something is implied that I think that story would be more interesting than the story we actually got. But anyway, it was still a good book, and I give this book 3.5 stars. I would potentially read another book by this author. I've never really heard of this author besides this book. I don't know if she has more books or if this was a debut or not. But yeah, I'd be willing to try more books by her because she's definitely a competent author. Just the ending did not work for me. Another thriller horror book I would call that I gave 3.5 stars to was Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. Now, this is the second book that I've read by her. I've also read The Good Daughter, which I also gave 3.5. I've given both of her books 3.5 stars. Kind of the main issues with her books is that for thrillers, they're kind of just too chunky. Like, this is like 500, almost 600 pages. Like, for me, thrillers should probably be less than 500 pages, like 300 to 400 pages, like either medium or fast paced or like just really interesting character work. That does it well for me. But this one, Karen Slaughter is definitely an amazing writer, and she does have great character moments, especially in this one. Like, the characters in here are very standout. So you're probably wondering, like, what exactly didn't I love about this book? One, the length, like, it's too long, although it is well paced at times. But my main issue is that this book just gets extremely graphic and dark and just kind of I don't want to say over the top, but kind of like this book just has just like the craziest crap I've ever read. Like, not even just like any book, like horror. Like, this is a horror book in a lot of ways because some messed up stuff happens in this book. And for me, it does go a little bit over the top where I'm just like, damn, that this author just pulls no punches. Like, god damn. And yeah, so a lot of this stuff was really hard to read, and I just did not enjoy a lot of it because of that. If she would have maybe toned it down a bit, which is a kind of a funny, like, can you just tone that scene down a bit? But yeah, this book is intense. That's probably the best way to describe this book. Gut-wrenching. And yeah, so it's kind of conflicting because I loved the characters and I loved the first part of this book where you're kind of like following these characters, you're figuring out what's going on. But then once you get like what's actually going on and just some crazy reveals, it was just too much. So I gave this book 3.5 stars. I don't know really if I'm interested in reading more of her stuff. Maybe, but yeah, her thrillers are often too long. And in this case, especially just kind of over the top violence for me. So it was good, but not great. 3.5 stars. Also, yet again, another thriller slash horror book that I gave 3.5 stars to is The Echo Man by Sam Holland. And I mentioned me, Stacy, and Ian making that video together. This is another book that he recommended to me, and I gave this book 3.5 stars. So, not a new all time favorite, but also not a dud like Looking Glass Sound was. This book was pretty good. I would say that this book is a lot of fun if you don't think too hard about it, because this book is all about this serial killer whose kind of motive is to copycat all of the great different kind of serial killers and mass murderers that have happened in history. So he's doing like the Charles Manson stuff, he's doing the Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, he's doing all of it. And so it's pretty interesting premise, but then once you think about it, you're just like, how is this guy pulling off all of this crap? So that was kind of like my main complaint. It's just like it like I do enjoy stories that can be unrealistic, but this one, while it is fun, I was just like, really, like, there's no way. There's no way. Especially in today's age. Like, a lot of these things that happened in history were like before technology. So like you could theoretically get away with a lot more back then, but doing all of this stuff now and doing it in such a short period of time and not making any mistakes is just crazy to me. So while this book was fun, it was not the best. I did enjoy it, but I had problems with it. But I still enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. All right, so now we're getting into 4 and 5 star territory and 4.5 star territory. So I really enjoyed all of the rest of these books. I enjoyed most of those other books, but these ones are like really good. So now let's talk about Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanaugh, which was our January pick for Thrill, Chill, or Kill book club. And this one did not disappoint. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of gotten that similar premise to what Alfred Hitchcock did in like the 40s or the 50s with Strangers on a Train, where basically two strangers meet up and they offer to kill each other's person and try to make an alibi, and so that they're not connected to them. So it's kind of that same premise, but like modern day with women who want to kill a person, a man that has wronged them. So that's kind of the premise that's set up here. It doesn't necessarily go in that direction throughout the whole book, but that was kind of the premise that sounded really good to me. This book, I think, had really good pacing, really good reveal throughout the whole thing. The characters weren't the best, but they were good enough to make me want to stay invested in the story. This was not a perfect story by any means, but it was a lot of fun. I did end up enjoying it. A lot of people had fun with this one. Some people had some problems with it, but I think overall it was a success. I do give this a thrill rating. So like thrill is really good, chill is decent, kill is like bad, kill it with fire. This one was a thrill. I gave it 4 stars. Not the best book, in my opinion, we've read for the club in its history, but I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars. Next up, another 4-star thriller. I've read a lot of thrillers in January, but the next one is The Sequel by Jean Hompf Corlitz, which this is the literal sequel to The Plot by Jean Hompf Corlitz, which was a thrill, chill, or kill book club pick from either like a year or two ago. I really loved that one. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. I loved the premise. I loved the plot. I loved the characters. Loved that book. 5-star book. And then this is the sequel titled The Sequel. And while this book was good, I really did enjoy it. It just kind of felt unnecessary because it was basically kind of similar plot to the first book. Like, I won't call it a rehash, but it was very similar at times. And while I did enjoy it, it did feel unnecessary. And it was kind of ironic because one of the lines in here, one of the characters is like, oh, the sequel is always worse than the first one. And yeah, this one I did not like as much as the plot. And it's funny enough, at the end of the book, it is hinted that there could be yet again another sequel to the sequel, which I think would be hilarious. Probably, again, not a book that is necessary, but I'll probably still read it and have a good time with it. This one, I gave 4 stars. Pretty good. And yet again, another 4-star thriller horror book that I read that I did enjoy was The Invited by Jennifer McMahon. And this one was a lot better than the previous book that I had read by her, which was The Winter People, which that one was kind of written in two timelines. So one was like present day, and then one was like, I don't know, like 100 or so years ago. And kind of the juxtaposition between those two. I loved the old timeline, like in the past. That was like a 4.5, 5-star storyline. But then like the present day, I really did not like. It's like 2.5 stars. So kind of balanced out to like a 3-star rating. It was good. This one I thought was much better. I gave this one 4 stars. It's got, very similar premise to a lot of horror books. You've got people moving in, kind of renovating a house that has a history, that has a past, and there could potentially be haunted stuff happening and spooky stuff. But I think it does it well, like for what the trope is. And the characters were really good. You've got these two characters, husband and wife, that are moving in, and then you've got kind of another character who's this little girl who's kind of suspicious of these new people that are coming in town, and also her mother went missing and she's trying to figure out what happened with that. So a lot of stuff happening in this book, and I thought it was really good, and it makes me want to read more of her stuff, because I read The Winter People, which was supposed to be like her best book, and I did not really enjoy it that much. Well, some of it, but overall I thought it was disappointing. This one kind of restored my faith. So I'm going to try probably some more by her, and hopefully it's better. But yeah, this one was solid. I gave it 4 stars. And now we get to the one book that I gave 4.5 stars to in January. This was a reread for me, so I already knew I was going to enjoy it. And that would be Priest of Bones by Peter McLean, the first book in the War for the Rose Throne series. And this one I've kind of got like a non-official buddy read along going on the Bookish Tournament Discord. A couple of people have joined me for this one. My plan is to do one a month, so 4 books, so finish it off in April. And yeah, this was a reread for me. I already knew I was going to enjoy it. Gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoy the story, the plot, the pacing, and the main character of Thomas Piety. Really love his character. My main kind of minor, I guess not really a minor complaint, but my main complaint with the series is that the other characters don't, maybe, it's hard to explain. I don't get a full grasp of them, and I don't really love any of them. So like, for a book to get 5 stars, I really have to enjoy kind of the ensemble of characters a lot. This one, kind of like the main reason I love this is Thomas Piety. Kind of the same thing to maybe a lesser extent with like Dresden. Like Harry Dresden is kind of like the main character, and I really like him. That one, I do really like some other characters, but kind of this one, like, it's a better example is Sun Eater. Like the main character in that one, I really enjoy, and then kind of the side characters are kind of there and they're good, but not really good. So that's kind of a better example. But yeah, Thomas Piety is great, and the story is great. And yeah, I really enjoyed my reread of this, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading the second book, Priest of Lies, in February. Now we're getting to the 4 5-star reads I had. 2 of them were rereads, and then 2 of them were new to me. So pretty good reading month for January. I'll first talk about the rereads, because that's not as surprising. So first one I'll mention is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. We do have a read-along going for the Gentleman Bastard series. First book, one of my all-time favorite books in general. It would definitely make my top 10 list. I've read this book several times, thoroughly enjoyed it, and not much else to say, really. It's a 5-star book. I love it, and I'm definitely excited to not only read the second book in February, Red Seas Under Red Skies, but I'm super pumped to get people's reactions to it that are also reading it, possibly for the first time, including my wife, Stacy. And yeah, I'm very pumped to get people's reactions. I love the second book and the third book almost as much as the first book. They're all 5 stars, so definitely one of my all-time favorite fantasy series. And yeah, absolutely enjoyed my reread. Another book that I thoroughly enjoyed rereading was Different Seasons by Stephen King. This was our January pick for the Stephen King book club run by me and Ian the Reader. And yeah, this was our January pick, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is my 3rd favorite Stephen King book of all time. I'm not going to go too much into detail because I did recently just post a dedicated review for this book, so go check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, just know that I love this collection, and Stephen King is really at his best writing novellas, in my opinion, and this is his best. So definitely check it out if you haven't already. All right, now we're getting to the 2 5-star books for January, the best books that I read in January, aside from rereads, of course. And funny enough, both of these books were recommended to me by my good pal Ian from Ian the Reader. And one of these was, like I mentioned, that Jake, Stacy, and Ian video where he recommends us books. This was actually his backup book, which probably in hindsight should have been one of the books that he originally picked, because I obviously gave it 5 stars. And the other one, he actually won kind of a 12 Days of Christmas event that we did in December, and he got to choose any book that he wanted me to read, which was scary at first because he was kind of hinting that he would pick War and Peace. But thankfully, thank God, he did not pick that, but he chose, I'll just say it, he chose Small Mercies by Dennis Lehane. And this book I was excited about because this was one of his best favorite books that he read, I think, in 2024. And I was super pumped to read it. This was my first Dennis Lehane book. And I know who Dennis Lehane is because he wrote Shutter Island. I haven't read the book, but I've seen the movie. And he's wrote a bunch of other books that I've heard of that I've heard great things about. I hadn't really heard of this book, and I didn't really know too much about it going into it. But man, did I thoroughly enjoy this book. Mainly because of the main character. I'm terrible with remembering names a lot of the time, so the name is skipping my mind here. But her character is amazing, and I love when she reminds me a lot kind of like a Dolores Claiborne kind of character, where she just talks and doesn't really have a filter. She'll just kind of say whatever is on her mind, and she's willing to do whatever she needs to do to get the job done. And this book just goes places, and just, I love when a book can have something unexpected happen and just really blow your mind. Like, this book just has a lot of those scenes where, like, she just goes there. And yeah, this book was amazing from beginning to end. And yeah, thank you, Ian, for recommending me this book and not War and Peace. But yeah, this book was amazing. And then the second book I gave 5 stars to, which again, recommended to me by Ian, is Boys in the Valley by, oh God, what's the author's name? Philip Frykowski, if I'm saying that right. This book I had been wanting to read for a while, even before I've heard things from Ian. Like, just seeing the cover of this book, I'm like, I want to read this book. And then kind of figuring out what it's about and hearing a lot of people say that it's just one of the best kind of modern horror books. It was really good. And yeah, I gave it 5 stars. And this one kind of has the setting of, like, I'm not quite sure what time frame it takes place in, but you've got kind of these group of boy orphans who are at this place, and it's kind of run by some questionable men and, like, just really poor conditions. And then all of a sudden, kind of in the middle of the night, these people show up and something strange happens, and some weird stuff's happening with these boys, possibly paranormal stuff, and it's just really good. I really like when writers, authors take time to have, like, great pacing, great storytelling, while also having great characters. Because sometimes authors can have a really fantastic plot, but, like, really cardboard, crappy characters. But with this one, like, I feel like the pacing is really good, but you also, he takes time to really develop these characters and make you care about them, which, you know, is something akin to, like, Stephen King, where he'll have really good stories, but he'll take time to develop the characters so that you actually care about what's happening. So yeah, this book was just really good, really just gut-wrenching scenes. And yeah, this is a book I could definitely see myself rereading because it was a lot of fun and had some really great moments. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I gave it 5 stars. All right, so those are all of the books that I read in the month of January. Pretty solid month, 15 books and only 1 DNF. I'll take it. February will probably not have that many, and also I already have 1 DNF in February, so hopefully no more. Hopefully, if I can just DNF 1 book a month for the rest of the year, I'd be happy. But we'll see. But yeah, February, you know, looking at my good old stat stuff here, really good. 15 books, 1 DNF, 2 5-star new to me books. I'll take it, because last year I was struggling to find 5-star books. I only ended the year with 8 in 2024, so getting 2 right off the bat in January feels really good. I had some duds, like a couple of books that I didn't really enjoy that much, but overall, January was a success. And now I'm wondering, have you guys read any of the books that I mentioned here? Let me know what you think of them down below. Also, what were your favorite books that you read in January? I'd love to chat about it with you in the comments. Also, just in general, comment down below any kind of video ideas you want me to pursue in the next weeks here or in the sometime in the future. I do have a bunch of ideas, but I want to try to do some videos that you guys are also excited about. So comment all of that down below and we'll chat about it. But again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you are subscribed, thank you so much for sticking around and watching these silly videos of mine. And I also have the Bookish Drummer Discord where tons of buddy reads and read-alongs happening in February and throughout the year of 2025. Thrill, Chill, Kill, Stephen King, fantasy read-alongs left and right. So just tons of stuff. John Mars, anything and everything. So Bookish Drummer Discord down below. Got my Patreon link down below, which, like I've said, Patreon will spend every month. If you win, you get to choose any book that you want me to read. And then also the God tier, which is the most expensive one. If you do that, you automatically get 2 books for me to read in the year. And I will not only read it, but I'll do a dedicated book review for it. So got that going on. And then I've got my Amazon wish list if you want to peruse that and buy me a book. Not that I need them, but I'll take them. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a fantastic day.